My name is Victor. I'm a serial killer who has murdered over 14 people. I'm the reason why the state of Texas underwent its judicial reform. The story goes like this. It all started in 1966 when I was 20 years old. I was found guilty for killing Lisa, 16 years old, a woman who I had nothing to do with, her boyfriend John, 17 years old, and John's cousin Stephanie, 15 years old, who was visiting from California. I stabbed Lisa with a knife. I shot the other two with a gun, like the kind that cowboys use. Afterwards, I kidnapped Lisa and raped her multiple times. First I raped her, then my accomplice raped her, and then I raped her again. After we were satisfied, I slit her throat and murdered her. Hey, you got anything to kill her with? How's this? I was sentenced to death in 3 different trials. But my sentence was reduced to life imprisonment by a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that made the death penalty unconstitutional in 1972, which was later revived. Later, Texas prisons were found to be overcrowded and infringing on the civil rights of prisoners. And in 1989, the Texas authorities released me on parole along with other murderers and condemned prisoners. After being released, I killed some prostitutes along with a young innocent woman and was sentenced to death again in court. Victor, you are hereby sentenced to death. In the United States, killing 3 people generally results in the death penalty, so the court's decision was extremely valid. Thus, I was sentenced to death once again. Due to the fact that I didn't learn my lesson during parole, the judicial and prison systems were greatly criticized. And that's how my foolish behavior, as I mentioned earlier, triggered a reform of the Texas judicial system. So anyway, after that, I was thrown into a jail cell. Let me tell you what the daily life of a condemned prisoner is like. We live a life similar to that of the other prisoners until our execution date is decided. We're all expected to work on given tasks together. The tasks depend on the prison, but usually involve assembly of electrical products, metal welding, woodworking assembly, printing, and dressmaking. Tasks are assigned according to age and ability. Endless days of working non-stop in silence on the tasks in front of us while being watched by the guards. To be clear, it's no fun at all. It drove me crazy. Then one day, after getting used to the work, I was informed that I wouldn't have to work anymore. Your execution date has been set. It's November 17th. Huh? The time had finally come. I was 52 years old. In the US, they inform prisoners of their exact execution date in advance. And with that, I was released from working. I could just imagine the people who worked with me in the factory thinking his execution date must have been set after I no longer showed up. Not having to work anymore, I had a lot of time on my hands. Just like most death row prisoners who have a set execution date, I spent most of the day reading books. Whenever I got tired of reading, I would just stare at the ceiling with vague eyes. Given the situation, those busy days of working now felt nostalgic. But it was strange. You would think that time would go by slowly as I indulged in reading and meditation, but instead it flew by. Before I knew it, the day of my death had arrived. The day of my execution, 12 o'clock. A few prison guards came to my cell to get me. I bid farewell to the guards who had watched after me and said, "Thank you so much for everything." with tears flooding my eyes. Not saying a word, the guard gently put his hand on my shoulder while he seemed to be biting his lips tightly. As I was escorted from my cell to a room behind the room where I would be executed, I willingly moved forward. I entered the room quietly and talked with a pastor there. The condemned get to talk to a pastor shortly before being executed. By the way, I had also spoken with him the day before about the afterlife. He gave me religious guidance and told me about the execution process. Time didn't wait for me. Time didn't keep me away from death. The moment had finally arrived. Death stood right behind me. It was as if he were holding a scythe in his right hand made of bones, with its sharp edge pressed up against my neck, ready to cut it off at any moment. 6 p.m. All executions are carried out at 6 p.m. I was moved to the execution chamber. Again, I thanked the prison guards. Tears overflowed from the depths of my eyes, and my voice was hoarse. I don't know if my words were even coming out. Thank you for everything. The Texas death penalty is carried out at the Huntsville unit in Huntsville, Texas. In the execution chamber, I was positioned on my back with my arms spread out and fastened with a belt. At this point, I was looking death straight in the eye. I thought to myself, am I really going to die? I was always the one doing the killing, but now it was me who was being killed. The death row staff and the family of the victims involved were sent to separate rooms. By the way, those who are allowed to witness an execution include the family and relatives of the condemned and of the victim, and a few people from the media. When I looked over to my side, I could see my family crying in sorrow through the latticed window. Even though I was a murderer, I could see that they still thought of me as family. I suddenly had a painful feeling in my chest. Eventually, preparations for the injection began, and I was so nervous that my legs tensed up. My hands couldn't help but quiver. When the preparations were complete, the warden declared the sentence, charges, and execution decision. You will now be executed by lethal injection. I spoke my last words into the microphone overhead. I'm really sorry for what I did. I don't think I can atone for my sins, even through death. I'm sorry for the trouble I caused to my parents and the victims. The warden gave the signal for everyone except me to leave the room. Feeling everyone's mercy towards me, I closed my eyes unbearably. The 3 prison guards standing by in the other room pushed a button all at once, and 3 kinds of drugs were automatically injected into me one by one. There were 3 buttons, and the guards were not informed of which one actually releases the injection. It was designed so that they wouldn't know who was actually responsible for killing me. At last, as I felt the injection coming into my body, I began violently resisting and yelling. Ah! That was my final resistance, so to speak. A sleeping drug was injected into my body and I lost consciousness. My head was feeling fuzzy. Next, a muscle relaxant was injected into my body. Yeah. My breath stopped. Then, a potassium chloride solution was put into my body and my heart stopped. It usually takes about 10 seconds to lose consciousness, but several minutes to die. In most cases, a doctor will declare the death of a condemned prisoner in a few minutes. He is confirmed dead. It's common for the inmate's family to receive the corpse, but my family didn't accept it. If no one receives the corpse, Texas buries it 3 kilometers away from the execution site. I muttered sadly as a spirit overlooking my tombstone from above the distant clouds. My grave is located in Joe Bird, also known as Peckerwood Hill, in Huntsville, Texas, and my tombstone shows only my execution date, November 17th, 1998, an X, meaning I was executed in Texas, and my death row number, 999055. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. This YouTube channel introduces stories of various genres, including shocking news and unsolved cases from around the world, the biography of great men, mysterious stories from Asia, and more, all in the form of comics. You'll find plenty of content that appeals to your intellectual curiosity.